What is up, ladies and gents? It's your boy Jermaine Event, main on MMA, and today we're going to watch this video, all right, from Luke Thomas. It's about our boy Israel Adesanya. As you guys know, I'm a huge Israel Adesanya fan, and yesterday's fight did not go too well for my boy. And now people are debating if that should be the last fight for the last style bender. Let's watch this video from Luke Thomas. I was gonna say Luca. Luca just got traded to the Lakers last night. That was crazy. But Luke Thomas, all right, is here talking about Israel Adesanya should probably retire.
So, UFC, which fight night was this? Let's get the name of this one accurately. This was UFC Fight Night. Adesanya versus Imavov, UFC Fight Night 250, UFC on ESPN Plus 108, UFC Saudi Arabia, whatever you would like to call it. This took place at the ANB Arena in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. In your main event, how about this? Nassourdine Imavov defeats Israel Adesanya at 30 seconds of round number 2. I'm going to pull up the rankings here so we can see what those were as we enter this, because that felt like a real turning point fight. Let me pull this up here just a second so we can get this going. As this is pulling up, I'm going to put my glasses on here so I can read everything properly. Okay. What were the fault lines heading into this contest? What was the way in which we could understand what this contest was about? And the answer was, to me, pretty obvious about what was happening here. This was old generation versus new generation, right? So you had the former champion, Izzy. Not just the former champion. By any measurement, he is the second best middleweight of all time. You heard Laura Sanko. I didn't get to hear everything from the broadcast, but I did hear her make this point that, his legacy is secure. That part is really not at issue anymore. It's just about, what else can he do? What else is really there for him? What does he want to do? What does he want with the time that he has remaining? Could a title shot really be something that is in play, depending on how things go? And I think that if he had gotten a win, I don't think he was going to jump the line like beating Khamzat Chimaev or something like that. And beating him. What I mean is beating him out for the who gets the winner of Strickland versus DDP2 at UFC 312. But he's kind of always a wild card, and he wouldn't be far behind. And maybe if Khamzat won, they would have.
And I definitely don't want Izzy versus Khamzat. I don't want that right now.
Fed him to Izzy after that or something like that. But that's really not going to be in play because he got stopped in this contest. But that was the fault line. Former champion, former great, 35, doesn't necessarily seem totally past it, but has been on something of a losing streak up to this point. But here was the catch to that. The catch was that, okay, he had 3 losses, but first of all, let's talk about the win. The win was the stoppage of Poatan. Phenomenal one at middleweight. That's the win. The other losses were Poatan, and that he was winning in that fight up until basically he got stopped. It was very competitive at a bare minimum. So, okay, that's no harm, no foul. And then the DDP fight, he was kind of in, and then he had this momentary lapse of judgment. But DDP is, he's always a gamer. He's always finding opportunity. And he was the reigning champion at that point. Okay, fair enough. You couldn't beat the champion. You're past the peak, but whatever. And then the Sean Strickland fight, which he did not look good in, but Strickland ended up being a champion. So you've got the guys he lost to: Poatan, double champ; Strickland, champ; and DDP, champ. Okay, you're just losing to the other guys who are either the very best or right at the very best in this division. Imavov, up to this point, has not been that guy.
Yeah.
He has been surging more recently, stopping Jared Cannonier, beating Brendan Allen, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the whole story, but he wasn't a former champion. He's not a former champion. He's never even had a title shot. So if you are Izzy and you lose to that guy, you've now lost to a new level of what it means. You're not losing to scrubs. That's not my point, but you're now, there's now a clear departure in terms of who you're losing to.
Yeah.
It's now down a notch, right? You're now losing to guys who are below at that point championship level. Now the loss might age well here if Imavov ends up going to a place and does great things. I guess we'll have to see, and we will talk about that in just a second. But for now, it represents something of a new layer. It's not just yet another loss for Izzy. It's a loss against somebody who is
potentially
not even at their peak at this point. Right?
Yeah.
Good fighter, great fighter, but not really at their peak, and not someone who's ever had a title shot, not a former champion. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. This is a pretty big loss. I'm looking at the rankings here currently. Now, this will be updated by Tuesday, but as it stands today, Izzy was sitting at number 2. Imavov was sitting at number 5. 1 is Strickland. He's going to be fighting DDP. Hamzat's sitting at 3. You would imagine he's next. 4 is Whitaker. Boy, I got to tell you, Whitaker versus Imavov might be kind of interesting. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But that was the fault line in this fight. So what happened in the fight? Well, in the first round, let's look at some of the numbers here. I'm going to pull this up. I'll show it to you in just a minute. In the first round, just the first round, Izzy landed 20 significant strikes. Imavov just 8. Yeah. Now, as I said during the broadcast, the single best strike either of them had came from Imavov, that kind of looked down, and then he came up with like that shovel punch, almost like that up jab kind of thing. Yeah, more like an up jab he was kind of throwing, and he didn't even turn it over. It was kind of like this, where you're holding a mug, right? So that was the single best strike, but Izzy was doing Izzy things. He was active, I thought, right away. He attempted 50 total strikes, 26 of which were significant. That's more than double than here. Let me show them to you. Look at the numbers here. They should be visible. So this is what I mean. This is round 1. Round 2, obviously, you only got 30 seconds of, so I don't even know what to make of it. But just round 1. We're trying to set the context here. Izzy attempted 50 total strikes, 26 of which he landed, and 44, I should say, were significant strikes. He landed about half of those. But just look at the volume play here. Just 23 total strikes attempted. He only landed 10. He attempted 21 significant strikes, only landed 8, went 0 for 3 on takedowns. Izzy had 1 kind of half-assed one. This 40-second control time measurement is just about pressing him into the fence. It's not top to bottom pressure. So it looked to me like Izzy was doing Izzy things. Someone had noted he didn't look as fast. That is true. He didn't look quite as nimble. That is true. But from a giving himself to the fight way, he did look pretty good in round 1. Pretty good. I didn't say amazing, but pretty good. He was active with the leg kicks. He was active with the middle kicks. You saw the question mark kick, a lot of stance switching. He had a couple of good jabs on his own. He had defended the takedowns. He was just more active, and he was doing more things. And that is a really dangerous way to let Izzy get into a fight. We've seen it against Yoel Romero. You've seen it against any number of different guys. He'll just keep doing that. He'll just, firing the leg kicks, poking to the body, firing to the leg kicks, switching stance, getting off at an angle, firing the leg kicks. And it all kind of works for him unless you really get a way to disrupt that. He had that one punch Imavov did, the looking down and then coming up with the shovel punch. That was real nice, and it put Izzy on his heels. And I think he probably saw from that something kind of interesting. But or something valuable, I should say. But round 2, man, it barely got going at all. Izzy comes out in round 2, body kicks him, I think maybe leg kicked him right away. Was going after him, but he jabbed with Imavov. And so what ends up happening is he catches the jab with the parry. I think he either caught the jab or he parried it with the rear hand, but he was trying to catch him with the jab of his own, and Imavov was stepping in. And so because Izzy was trying to intercept him, the right just came over the top because it was wide. His hands were like this. He had the one hand for the jab of Imavov, and then the other hand, the jab hand out. Well, look, there's nothing. The shoulder's not up, and it wasn't coming around the side. It was hooking, but it wasn't like Izzy was kind of ducked down here. And even then, it may have hit the temple, although this one hit the chin. But there was nothing protecting him. His head was kind of leaning back. A leaning back thing is something that you see a lot in MMA because there's much more open space to get away with it. It's what Sean Strickland specializes in. He has specialized in this idea that he's going to cross-step and backpedal and lean his head out of the way, which in boxing is a bit of a no-no, but you're much more constrained in boxing in terms of your space. So that's why it can be a bit of a problem. It can be a problem in MMA too, but it's less of a problem. So you see guys get away with it. But I mean, there's different kinds of athletic profiles, there's different kinds of athleticisms, and there's different ways in which athleticism affects the game. I want to be very clear what I'm about to say, which is Izzy has a very technical game. Joe Rogan once called him one of the more, if not the most technical striker we've ever seen. At the time he said that, I think that was true. But Izzy also does have a game that is heavily complemented by his own
His
athleticism.
height.
And to the extent the athleticism is impacted because he just can't get out of the way of things, his reflexes aren't quite there.
Yeah.
Balance can be there, speed overall, just your ability to move through space in a way that is helpful to you. That looks to me like it was compromised a couple of fights ago.
Yeah.
You saw it compromised to a degree in the DDP fight, and it also looked compromised
In
here.
Strickland.
I'm not in any way suggesting Imavov fought some scrub. That's not what I'm saying. But it is also fair to say that if your game is to some extent predicated on athleticism, as you age, that part of it is going to be caught up with very, very quick. Now, what's interesting about it, and I have to go back and look at exactly how we set it up with eliciting the jabs or trying to get him to jab with him. Because, if you're jabbing and you're really extending, then what's happening there? You're planting your weight typically. And if you're planting your weight, that means you are stationary. You're not moving around. You have to sit down on the punch to let it, go. And Imavov got him dead to rights.
Yeah.
So could a younger Izzy have rolled with it more? Could he have seen it coming better? Could he have gotten out of the way further? I think that's part of the story, but I also feel like the lead that Izzy has had as a very technical striker over the rest of the division, it's not what it once was, if it's there at all at this point. I mean, again, I don't know that Izzy was 100% when he fought Sean Strickland, but Sean was able to march him down. Now, Poatan marching you down is a different story. Plus, he got finished, but there was some element of that. And DDP didn't exactly have that. It's not how he won, but the larger portion of that story, I think, has proven itself to be true. Let's look at some of the targeting here if we can. Here, I'll pull this up again. Here's the targeting. So this is what they were aiming at. I mean, look at this. No body shots from Imavov. He was faking low and then coming high, but he was I wouldn't call this head hunting since 40% went to the legs. In fact, they were identical to the legs. But you could see him mixing it up. So he was really trying to mix it up. I mean, look at this first round. Total strikes landed. Like, he really just, I said I thought he won it in real time. And there you have it. And then in the clinch, obviously, they did a little bit of work there. I'm not sure how they defined the ground here since he was never credited with a takedown, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. And you could see him mixing it up. We knew that if Imavov was going to get a win here, it was either going to be one of two ways, right? Imavov was either going to be able to take him down and make some effective use of that, or he was going to have to get inside of boxing range. Well, look at what he got. Pressure, not quite up against the fence, but pretty close to it. It was certainly pressure in the octagon, verbally, physically making him be at or around the black line, in certain cases behind it. And then using his boxing game in that way by getting Izzy to, meet him with it. Or maybe he did. I have to see if he actually set that up with what he was doing earlier in the fight. But either way, Izzy choosing to box with him. And Izzy did that in the first round too, in that flurry. When he was like completely square with him, he was like kind of flurrying. And I was like, dude, I don't know if this is the place to flurry with a guy when your back is up against the fence like that. But he did. I mean, he took risks. Like, you can't say Izzy wasn't taking risk, man. He was taking risk. He absolutely was taking risk, but I don't know if those were advisable risks he was taking or not. You know what I mean? I don't know. I just feel like the game, his game has slowed.
Yeah.
And I feel like the rest of the division has, or at least, the rest of the top of that division has clearly caught up or surpassed him at this point, which is fucking inevitable. And I know what folks might say, 35. That is typically a demarcation line for excellence, and you can see that it still is even in this division, although middleweight was not one of those divisions when you look at the over and under 35 scenario. When you get to heavyweight, it's almost 50-50, so it's not really all that stark. But for a guy who's had, a plus 100 total pro kickboxing, boxing, and MMA bouts, I'm sure that punch might have sat a lot of people on their ass, but it sat him on his ass. And by the way, correct me if I'm wrong. Let me see this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that not altogether the similar way to Sean Strickland did it? Let me see that real quick. I want to look that up. I'm going to make sure that the audio doesn't come over. I want to see that. Let's see that real quick. I want to see Strickland. Was that not the same right hand that he got him with? Let's see. I want to see that. Oops, going to turn this off. Hold on. Where are we at here? Right here. Let me see this from Sean. Here we go. I can't show it to you guys, obviously, because then UFC will, they abuse the copyright system, and I they'll take it all down. But let me see this. He did a hand trap, so it's a little bit different. No, it's not quite the same. He did a hand trap and came with the right hand, and Izzy was trying to greet him with a hook, so it's a little bit different. This was off the jab, not quite the same, but similar kind of range, similar phase of the game, and similar sort of like tools being used, boxing tools, similar place and real estate in the octagon. So there are some echoes there, and this is what I mean. You got to be able to march through the leg kicks, whatever way you want to solve that problem. You have to march inside of kicking range and then be making him wrestle with you and or make him box with you. And not that that's like an obvious thing that anybody's going to be able to do, but if you can do those things, and those happen to be two areas where Imavov excels, look at the results. So to me, I agree with Lorisenko's analysis of Izzy. You've got 5 title defenses. Someone else, maybe it'll be DDP.
You know what really hurt as an Izzy fan? I don't know if I'll watch it here in this video. Izzy posted himself reacting to his loss, and that was pretty hard to watch. But the thing that was really hard to see was he's watching the video, and then Lorisenko's commentary, she says, it took one punch to kill a legend. And like, you could see it like Izzy, it like affected him. You could see him react physically, kind of jerked when she said it took one punch to kill a legend, man. And then after he was like, I'm still alive. Like it could tell it hurt, man. This sucks. As a Izzy guy, it might be over. And it's unfortunate. That's my boy. I mean, he's had a great career. He's still my boy, but it is what it is.
Maybe it'll be Hamzat. Maybe it'll be Sean Strickland. Who knows? But someone's going to have to match or exceed that to take his place. But in terms of as the second best middleweight of all time, but in terms of like where we are now, this is firmly, to me, Izzy is dropping outside of the top 5. I mean, Whitaker's sitting at 4, but this loss is pretty bad. He's probably sitting outside the top 5, and I think it's maybe a little early to declare that his title aspirations are over, but I would suspect that he probably won't be in a UFC title fight at any point for the rest of his career. I think those days. I'm going to guess probabilistically that door's probably closed. And I don't really know where he's going to go from here. Let's look at his resume if we can, man. I mean, it's obviously a very elite one, but more recently it has been bad. So he had the loss to Jan Blachowicz all the way back in 2020. Then he beats Marvin Vettori again. Then he beats Robert Whitaker again. Then he beats Jared Cannonier. That fight was not great. Then he fights Poatan in 2022, was doing well up until he wasn't, gets the rematch, wins, and you're like, okay, so he's got just the one loss there. But then he loses to Strickland in 2023. Then he gets stopped by DDP in 2024. And now he has been stopped by Imavov in 2025. DDP couldn't do it until the 4th round. Imavov did it in the 2nd round. So now you have 3 losses in a row, 4 out of his last 5. In the last 2, he's been finished. He's actually been finished in 3 of the last 5, but he's finished in 2 of the last ones consecutively. And now it's happening quicker. And I'm going to say, I mean, the choke was thorough, but like that, I don't recall DDP landing a shot on Izzy like that. You know what I mean? So like they're getting worse. Like one of the lessons that I have seen, and Izzy, I think, is a smart guy. I think his team is very smart. I think his manager, I mean this quite sincerely, I think Tim Simpson is very, very bright. And they're going to have a conversation about what's next for him and whether he wants to continue and what that looks like. And I don't know what the terms of that conversation are going to be. What I can say is that I have seen this movie before, which is an elite guy loses not at all, and then it starts happening all the time, and then each one starts to get a little bit worse than the last one, and that's Tony exactly Ferguson. What you're seeing with at least the last 3. Strickland beat him up, but it went the full 5, and it wasn't a terrible beating, but Strickland won that one pretty clean. Again, 137 strikes to Izzy's 94. And then you fight Duplessis. And by the way, all of those happened in different years, 2023, 2024, 2025. So it's not like the time off is making a difference in any kind of positive direction.
Mm-hmm.
So he loses to Strickland. Then he gets finished by DDP with 4 takedowns, by the way, 2 subs attempted in that one. And then he just gets, I mean, basically 5 minutes and change, a round and some change. So the stoppages are happening quicker and quicker and quicker. This is where I felt everyone's career is different. So let me stop when I say that. Everyone's career is different, but I have seen this before. And my personal opinion is, depending on how they matchmake him, and of course that's always the key consideration, but in my personal opinion, what's next is going to be, if he doesn't stop soon, is going to be like an epic beatdown.
Fuck.
And that is something I really hope to avoid for his sake.
I don't want to
and
see that.
Frankly, ours. I don't have any desire to see that.
Mm-mm.
I don't need to see that. It doesn't prove anything to me. It's not valuable to the, I think.
It's not valuable to anybody.
Promotion. It's certainly not valuable for Izzy's long-term health and his, future. Do I think he should retire? I wouldn't be mad if he did. I don't think that would be a bad call.
No, I wouldn't be mad.
You're at a place now where the losses are starting to pile up. They're happening quicker and quicker. They're happening, and I would argue, in more devastating ways.
Yeah.
The next stop is something like, what Justin Gaethje did to Tony. I mean, that's a little bit maybe like a really like hardcore example, but something bad. That's what's waiting on the other side, is if he keeps going. And maybe that wouldn't even be the next fight, maybe it wouldn't be the next 2 fights, but it will happen. This is the nature of the game. This is the nature of breakdown. This is the nature of aging. This is just the nature of it. And it comes for absolutely everybody, including guys who were some of the very best to ever do it in this division, like Izzy was. I would like to see him retire. I mean, it's up to him. I'm not, I cannot tell grown men what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone who's had the career he's had across combat sports and now where it's going and where it's trending, look at the trend. Look at the trend. Like, here's the trend before the Poatan fight, and this was the one at 2020 where, it was kind of close. Like, look at the trend. This is how it started. This is how it's going. Like, actually, this is kind of how it's going. This is how it's going. You know what I mean? We're just in here. Let me move this around. We're just in a different place now.
Damn it.
We're in a different place now. And he keeps going, and this is going to get ugly. I don't wish it on him. I have no desire to see that. I think, his best wins are behind him, and probably his career should be behind him at this point. And if it is, he had an unbelievable career, super good, but it's starting to get bad. Okay, which takes us to Imavov, if I do say so myself. 28 years old. This is what we were talking about. Is he finally going to cross to the next level by, when he finally gets a chance? Because if you look at his record, it's been impressive, but he, to me, has been a little bit more limited. Strikes landed per minute, 4.5. Strikes absorbed, 3.2. These are good numbers, especially the strikes landed. That's pretty high. But, he didn't have a super well-rounded offense. He had the loss to Phil Hawes early in his career. I think that, maybe messed some people up. He had the loss to Sean Strickland. He had the no contest to Chris Curtis. So, there's a couple times where he stepped up a little bit, or, even got tripped up a little bit. And, you didn't know what to make of it. You're like, well, I don't know who this guy is. But that Strickland loss was in January of last year. No, 2 years ago. So he was 26 when he lost to Sean Strickland. Well, now he's 28.
Is a new gym.
28 to 32 is not always, but that is typically the sweet spot for a fighter's athletic prime. It can come a little bit earlier. It can go a little bit later. It can be weight class dependent. But typically speaking, in a general sense, that's the sweet spot. 28 to 32, and it can go again. It can go a little longer. It can come a little earlier. It all depends. But it looks to me like this dude is entering his prime. Look at his fucking record now from before. This was Imavov's record before, right? Some nice wins. Don't get me wrong. The Shabazian win, the Joaquin Buckley win. These are good wins. Like, he had some, even the Ian Heinisch win. These are good wins, but the Strickland loss, and then he didn't do well against Chris Curtis or whatever that was. It was the weird fight, right? And then now look at it. Since then, Dolidze, win. Cannonier, win. And he stopped Cannonier. Brendan Allen, win. Izzy stopped him. And he stopped Izzy quicker than he stopped Allen, Cannonier, and Dolidze. So, like, they're getting quicker. Look at this. This one went full distance, round 5. Next one, round 4. Next one, round 3. This one, round 2.
Round 3 decision.
He's getting faster and faster and faster and faster at how quickly he's putting these contemporaries away as he is going up the ladder.
He went from a 5-round fight to a 3-round fight and went to decision.
That's exactly what you want to see. You are hitting at the right time of your career. You're 28 years old. This is where I want to start seeing some of your best work. Right on cue. Right on cue. Had I'm not going to say a rough first round, but had something of a relatively quiet first round with the exception of that one punch that came up the middle. Which was nice. And he had a couple leg kicks too, but, something of a quiet round. But he didn't need much, obviously, in the second round to get going, stayed on the game plan, stuck to his strengths, set it up nicely, and look at the result. That was awesome. There is a log jam up at middleweight. We have at UFC 312, Sean Strickland's going to obviously fight DDP. Hamzat has to get the winner of that. I don't know how that one's going to go, so there might be like a Hamzat Strickland 2. There could be a Hamzat DDP 2. They could do a running back. It's a little hard to be like, oh, Imavov's just going to get the title shot based on who wins between Chimaev and Strickland or Chimaev and DDP. It may not be so straightforward. A lot of things can complicate that. I would like to see him fight one more time. And I'm going to tell you, I think if he fights Robert Whittaker, that would be sick. That would be sick. I don't know if Robert Whittaker is going to be ready. I don't know how that's going to go. A lot of this may just depend on who's available and when they get called upon, right? We don't know. But that is going to be, that could be, if there's an opportunity for it, that would be amazing. Otherwise, Imavov doesn't have anyone else to fight at this point. That would make sense. Or, maybe he could fight the loser of Strickland versus DDP and then use that in the interim. Like, there's ways to get maybe like one more fight, 2 if you're really pushing it. But to me, it looks like the pecking order now is, right now as we speak, DDP, Strickland. You could put John Hamzat in there ahead of if you want, but basically DDP, Strickland, Hamzat, and now Imavov. That's the top of the division, and they have pushed Izzy out. And he has set himself up nicely here. That's a great win for him. Kind of a quiet first round, but stuck to his strengths, stuck to the game plan. When it was time to go, he did. He did it with authority. Absolutely fantastic left hand to close the show when he knocked him down to really polish. Because the right hand by itself wasn't going to close the show. It was the left one that really put him back down face first. And so that's a really great, accurate shot in a kind of a high-stress situation. So that was really well done. Excellent finishing by him. I think he's got good accuracy. And then that stoppage. The last thing I'll say about the stoppage, I didn't think the stoppage was the best stoppage I've ever seen.
Izzy was kind of getting up.
Gone a little bit longer. It was a little bit early, but it wasn't a bad stoppage. His back was showing to Imavov the entire time. It wasn't like he was scrambling to his base all that well. He got hit with the right hand, and then the left one really did big damage. Like, you kind of are where you kind of are at that point. So, yeah, tough day at the office for City Kickboxing. Tough day at the office for Izzy. This doesn't change his place in the middleweight history, but it does change his place in the middleweight contemporary hierarchy. And now, Nassourdine Imavov really putting himself at the front of that line in a very, very effective way, or pretty close to the front of that line, right on time. And by the way, let's see what that kid really turns into in the next 2 years. He's just now, in my view, entering his prime.
So, shout out to Luke Thomas. Shout out to the GOAT, Luke Thomas. Man, it's even hard to even listen to him talk about Izzy in this way, but he's telling the truth, man. Izzy should probably retire. I don't want to see Izzy catch a major beatdown. What would be terrible for Izzy? You put him in there with somebody like Anthony Hernandez, who's going to take him down, tire him out for a couple rounds, and then have that exhausted Izzy stand with him. He's going to knock Izzy out. And I don't want to see it. I don't know what's going on with the camera. I don't know what's next for my boy, man. I think he should probably retire. I don't want to see him lose. I think I saw him saying he hates letting his fans down, you know. And as a huge Izzy fan, I'd personally say the biggest Izzy fan, I'd like to see him not fight again. Or I don't want to see him lose, you know. If he could have won tonight, he looked great. Just like Dana said, he looks great up until the end of the fight. He looks great. All right. And when Luke pulled up those stats, matter of fact, I got UFC stats right here. Let's pull it. It's one of my ever tabs. Yes, let's pull this up right here, ladies and gents. We got it. All right. Izzy threw 56 strikes, total strikes in the first round. Or is this total fight? Total fight. So he landed 52% of his strikes. All right. He threw 56 strikes. Imavov threw 34. But what I was seeing, okay, here we go, per round. In the second round, Izzy landed 6 of 6. Izzy was coming in, touching him up. Then there was that eye poke. And immediately off the break of the eye poke, Izzy didn't really take any time from the eye poke. That part, I don't know if it should necessarily be, even forgot about it, that eye poke happened. And he could have taken like 5 minutes to recover from the eye poke, but he was just like, no, let's go. And Izzy said he felt like Imavov was tired at that point. So he didn't want to give him a break. That eye poke happened. Let's not forget that there was an eye poke right before the finish. All right. And Izzy decided not to take any time because he felt like Imavov was getting tired. It was the second round. I thought that was a weird comment to say, that he felt like he was getting tired in the second round, at the start of the second round. But it is what it is. I felt like Izzy looks good until he didn't. Just like I felt that way in the DDP fight, but I'd be cool with Izzy retiring. He's one of the best, all right? And I don't need to see... Like, I was a Imavov guy years ago. If you guys go back to the Babylon 5 podcast, I was hyping up Imavov for a long time, pretty much up until the Strickland fight. Then I was like, oh, shit, I thought he was going to dominate somebody like Sean Strickland, honestly, is what I thought. Maybe he could now that he's with a better gym. I think he could beat Sean Strickland in the rematch, but it's rough, man. I would be cool with Izzy retiring. I would be cool with Israel Adesanya retiring, ladies and gents. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Should Izzy retire, or would you love to see Izzy for at least one more fight? All right, let me know in the comments, ladies and gents. Shout out to Luke Thomas. Thank you guys once again for being here. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and I will see you guys when I see you guys. I'll holla.